Hi guys, in today's video I want to talk about motor mounts. Now the last few weeks I've been spending a lot of time building motor mounts. Cadco sells adapter motor mounts for early Cadillac, G-body, Chevy. There's a universal kit for most of the regular Chevys. A lot of guys swap these into trucks, and they've got some other motor mounts. Now I also was working on kind of designing a new motor mount here. This is a Chevy bell housing on my run stand. That puts this motor mount sitting where it would on a Chevrolet motor, and I wanted to see where it fell on the Cadillac block. Now I probably have to make another jig, plus I need to get this off of here because I need to use the run stand. But it got me really thinking about motor mounts. Now, even for my own use, I have a 76 truck. Though it runs fantastic, the motor needs to come out, be resealed, valve job, maybe the tranny work. And so it's going to be out and down for a little bit. And we discussed maybe putting the Make It Run motor in temporarily into the truck and see how it goes. And so that got me thinking even more about motor mounts. Now, the standard 76 mount is this mount here. And that's what the universal plate is designed to do. It just brings a flat plate out from where the Chevy mount would be, brings it forward, gives you a hole so that you can mount this onto the flat plate and put it on there. And that would actually work even in my truck probably if I wanted to do that. Now, because it's a 76 truck, it has what's called a clamshell mount. Now, in later years, the GM started going to a different motor mount. Instead of having the rubber on the upper part, they did the rubber on the lower part completely captive, and they used what Chevy calls a clamshell mount. And this just fits over the rubber mount and bolts using the same 3 bolts just like this solid motor mount I have here. So it bolted to a regular Chevy block and fit onto the lower part that's rubber. Now, that's what's on my truck. And so the question became, can we avoid moving the mount that's on the truck if we can leave it where it's at? Now, with doing this, I've gotten a few measurements, and because it's a intermediate tail shaft turbo 350 and I'm going to a short tail shaft turbo 400, I actually need to probably bring the motor back a little bit. So this mount would actually wind up a little further up here. Now, that made me realize that I could probably use the later Cadillac motor mount. This is from a 425 Cadillac, and it was done after the 500 motor. So you're talking 77, 78, 79. And it uses the same mount that's actually on my truck. GM went to this mount and used it on pretty much everything. So when you go to the parts store, it's going to say, it's Buick, Cadillac, Chevrolet, because GM used it. And this mount fits right over the mount that's already on my truck. And if you look, the 425 mount actually moves backwards just a little bit. Now, it's not all the way back to where this is where the Chevy mount would be. So technically, this is going to sit back here, which moves the motor back about an inch, inch and a half. And that actually helps me because the Turbo 400 short tail shaft is actually a little shorter tranny than the Turbo 350 intermediate. And so coming back, as long as I have room at the firewall, will actually help. So I'm kind of hoping, using the 425 mount, that the motor itself will drop into place on the truck. And this is some of what you look at when you're doing an engine swap. Now, in the case of my truck, I have some things that are already taken care of, so I don't have to worry about it. The truck has been converted to internal tank, electric fuel pump. So all I have is a fitting on the frame that will go right to the car. So I don't have to worry about the fact that the Cadillac fuel pump's on the other side from a Chevrolet fuel pump. And I've also converted the truck to electric fan. So I don't have to worry about a fan or a fan shroud. All I have to do is physically get the motor in and maybe look at how the power steering. But power steering hooks up the same way for most GM. So even if I got stuck a little bit, not really stuck, I could use the standard Cadillac power steering pump mount and just hook the hoses to it, and I'd probably be fine. And so some of that is really not a big worry. There is a different location in the frame rail for me to move the transmission mount back because, of course, going from a turbo 350 to a 400, the transmission mount's in a different place. But GM tended to use that transmission in the truck with a big block Chevy, so they have the mount holes already there, and measuring it, it looks like I should be able to just move it back. I might need a little bit of an adapter plate in order to position it just a little bit, but it should be okay. But like I said, this is all stuff you look at when you're doing motor mounts. Now, I'm still going to pursue this other design for a motor mount to see if it helps. It's going to take a jig and some other stuff, so it's not going to happen right away. Now, Courtney has also tried, one of his thoughts was to mount this. If you look, this has got the 3-bolt pattern of the Chevy, but it bolts to the Cadillac block. But if you look, that still puts it further forward. So either you're moving the block way back, or you still have to do an extension plate. And so that's really not probably a lot of help to guys. And it's all some of the stuff you need to look at. Now, there are a few other mounts out there. I basically, back in the 80s when I did the Monty, I used what Cadco now calls the universal mount. I made my own. It's just a flat plate that allows the 76 style mount, the regular big block Cadillac mount, to go on. Now, the problem I had with this is it made it too tall. The motor actually sat up a little higher than I wanted it to sit. It would have probably worked. I just didn't like how it was sitting. Now, there are also other mounts out there. This is early Cadillac, like 66 Cadillac 429, and it's shorter here, but still has the same 2-bolt pattern. It's missing an ear on one side, but it has, and it'll bolt right up to the block. And this is a shorter profile, and then you can do something similar to the flat plate where it comes forward in order to make it work if you have to fab up for a different sort of mount. And all of this is stuff that you want to kind of plan ahead for. Now, like I said, if you're doing a general swap that's done a lot, early Cadillac but 500 motor, get rid of that 429 motor, 390 motor. There are adapters that Cadco already takes care of. G-Body at one point was a really popular swap. Most regular GMs, you can use the universal kit. Lots of guys go into the truck and they tell me that this 425 mount actually works very well. That the motor basically kind of just drops. I'm hoping the spacing side to side is correct. And I'm trying not to modify the truck too much. I mean, if you're doing a swap that's going to be there forever, you can modify the car, make it fit, and it becomes the motor that's in the car. In this case, because I may put the small block back in, I'm trying to make it to where I'm just dropping the motor and tranny in, and it works. And then if I want to pull it out on a weekend and put the Chevy motor back in, I could do that and keep going without having to modify a bunch of stuff. I'll have probably a little fab to do initially to make things right. Maybe a little different intermediate drive shaft for the Turbo 400 yoke. But if I plan ahead a little bit, which is what I'm trying to do, I'm hoping it goes in pretty easy and basically can come in and go out as I please, depending on what motor I want to put in it. And that would let me test a few Cadillac motors, or if I like the Caddy with the extra torque, don't mind the fuel mileage, we'll see how it does, we can leave it in there more permanently. But like I said, this is part of what I'm looking at, and there are some other mounts. But I wanted you to realize that, the 425, 368 Cadillac, the later model mount, is sometimes a help when you're doing some of the GM stuff. Um, if you're doing a very common swap, Cadco has mounts. There is a universal that's kind of okay. Um, but it's some of the stuff you need to measure and look at and see where you're at so you're not having to change a lot. Now, in the case of my truck, if I was to use, say, a Cadillac transmission with the really long tail shaft, well, then I'd have to probably completely do away with the intermediate drive shaft and make a special drive shaft in order to fit the truck. And I think some guys have done that. That's not really what I'm wanting to do. And I have a Turbo 400 short tail shaft in the back from the Monte Carlo years ago. When I converted it to manual, I still have the original trim. So I figured I might as well make use of it. So all of this is stuff you want to look at if you're getting ready to do a swap. Where the fuel pump is, what you're going to do about power steering. Do you need to worry about alternator? Is it on the opposite side of where you were? I know some guys have even put these into like F-body or Ford trucks or even Mustangs, so things are a little different. Every swap has its own challenges. Usually the biggest challenge is exhaust. Now in the case of my truck, I have headers on it already on the small block. And so I'm kind of hoping if I run the Cadco truck header that I can pretty well drop the motor in, drop the header in, and maybe just make a little adapter in order to hook up the header to the existing exhaust that's there, so I'm not having to rebuild the whole exhaust, because that's another worry you have to think about. Height. The only thing that I'm probably really concerned about is I'm not sure the valve cover will clear the power brake booster on the truck. It's got a fairly big around booster, but I could probably replace that with a double diaphragm, smaller diameter booster and just permanently leave it in there so I have a little more clearance. There is nothing wrong with the brakes that are on the truck. There's nothing wrong with the booster that's on there, but I could still probably do that swap even ahead of time to facilitate the motor going in quickly. Like I said, I'm trying to plan ahead, so it's not a 2-month project, it's not a 3-month project. I'm not having to fabricate all this stuff. I'm hoping I can get it down to where maybe I can get a couple of friends over and we can pretty much drop it in, fab up just a few parts, and then it literally becomes, a weekend job to go from one motor to another without a problem. So if I get, a different Chevy motor done, I could actually throw it in the truck and drive it around if I wanted. I have an LT1 in the back I want to build, or if we decide to do one of the LS motors, I could maybe pop it in temporarily and see how it drives around and make sure that these motors are okay, and kind of make the truck a little bit of a platform, though I use it all the time, so I don't want too much downtime when I'm doing that. But that's motor mounts, and that's what I'm kind of working on. Like I said, we've been fabbing up a lot of different options out there for motor mounts, so there is stuff out there if you're swapping into something else. I know at one point there was a company, Jaguars Runner I think it was, that made adapters to put the Cadillac motor in an early Jaguar. Not that that comes up anymore. I haven't even seen one of those in a little while. One of the 70s vintage Jaguars with the big nose. But there is stuff out there to help. Cadco has a various swap headers. They've got headers for doing this motor into a earlier Cadillac, shaped and kicking out to get around the X-frame. There is, like I said, truck headers. There's some G-body headers. There's some generic stuff. So some of that all helps. And like I said, I've spent the last few weeks kind of in motor mount mode because we've just been building all sorts of motor mounts. And it really got me thinking about this. I need to get this off of my run stand. I want to get the make it run motor on. I've got some carbs I need to test, and I want to use that motor as a test bed. I also have a buddy that's going to start building some carbs, and he's going to need somewhere to test some of the carbs and make sure that they're working okay, not flooding, functional before they actually go to somebody. And so that's what we're going to do, and so I got to make this run. But I was kind of in the mode and wanted to, before I pulled this off real quick, wanted to look at the 425 mount and see, and I think in my case that's going to work pretty well. The guys online have told me that that's makes it almost a drop-in on that style of truck. Like I said, it's a 76 Chevy two-wheel drive pickup truck, and so we'll see how that goes down the road. I've got the mounts ready to go. I've got new mounts because I think the factory ones are oiled and all broken. So once I pull the motor, I can also swap the mounts out. I'll still have to probably pick up a set of headers, and I'm hoping that they fit. And I'll have, like I said, a little bit of fab, a little bit of exhaust work, but hopefully my plan works out and we can just pretty much drop it in a few days and make it work. I'm not sure when we're going to get to that. I'm driving the truck at the moment, and like I said, runs like a top. I just got to keep putting oil in it. And at the moment, I got to pull all this apart, and I'll make a jig to try and keep working on this, but that doesn't require this to be on here. And I'm going to put the make it run motor on. We'll make sure that the 460 adapter sealed and that it's actually running okay. And then, like I said, I've got a couple of carburetors that I need to build and test, and I've got a couple other carburetors I need to test too that are already ready to go. And so we're going to be doing that on the make it run motor on the run stand. So I wish you all luck with your projects. Like I said, there are optional motor mounts out. If you're doing a different swap from some of the stuff that's obvious, you've always got the Facebook group. Somebody out there might have done something similar, so you can post what you've done and see what's going on. I'm thinking I found a solution for mine. I will keep working on this. I'm not sure how much this one will actually help anybody. There isn't a lot of movement front to back, and I'm thinking the problem is the motor is going to have to sit in a slightly different position depending on the chassis, and we probably don't have enough play in here to make a mount where you can have several holes and move it forward and back. Even in my case, like I said, I got to go back a little bit because the tranny's a little shorter, and I'm going to be crowding the firewall probably just a bit, but the good news is the Cadillac distributor's on the front, so we don't have to worry about that, and we'll see how all this goes. I'll keep you more posted when I get closer to that time, and we may even do a video of the whole swap and maybe even live. We'll see how it goes. So I wish you luck on your projects, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.